Hey folks, Fernando doing our video for the Modern Survivalist. In this video is going to be a reply to the video by Lucky Gunner that's called "Don't Get Cocky, Why All Defensive Revolvers Should Be Double Action Only." Now, before I go on, I just want to say this. It's going to be a reply just sharing a few thoughts of mine and maybe adding a little bit more information, but I have nothing but respect for Lucky Gunner, Chris, who did the video. The channel is very good. He has great content. I'm actually going to be leaving the link below for you guys to go watch that video first and then watch mine, so as to have a good idea of the context that we're working on here. But especially these days where everyone seems to be so aggressive in their way they express themselves, so polarized, it's as if you cannot have a different opinion without being aggressive and confrontational in the way you express yourself. Not the case here. It's going to be a mature a video on a different point of view, maybe a little bit more additional information and another twist to keep in mind. So, having said that, the video is very good, and he starts with the the beginnings of the revolver, especially. I mean, here he says it's all defensive revolvers, but the video is mostly about police use of the revolver. So he starts with, of course, a single action revolver. At first, you had to cock the hammer for each to fire it, then it evolving into the double action, which at first was like something that's to use only in emergencies when you didn't have the time to cock the revolver before firing, because that was the way in which it was supposedly accurate. I actually have that same revolver, a 1905 hand ejector, and it's true that if you don't cock the hammer, you cannot use the sights at all. So he does a very good job in going through all this evolution of the revolver into the double action revolver and double action firing, which a lot of folks in YouTube just express their opinions, but they're not backing it up with anything. Here he quotes different sources, and he's backing up his opinion with data, with solid information. Now, he ends up evolving into this idea that basically the double action revolver is the way to go, and single action kind of has not much of a place, and that you basically should end up with something like this, like a bobbed hammer, or sometimes called hammerless, even though there's a hammer inside, but something like this, as a hammerless or bobbed hammer revolver. Now, I think this kind of revolver has its place, don't get me wrong. Usually this is more like the kind of thing I would recommend, for example, for my 90-year-old grandmother that's going to be having basically very little training on how to use a gun. She's going to be keeping this revolver in her socks drawer, and she's going to be pulling it out in somewhat not catching it with socks and other underwear, and using it as a last resort means of self-defense. Ironically enough, this is one of the most difficult guns to use. If you know anything about firearms, you know that a hammerless snubby revolver is as hard as it gets in terms of firearms. The thing is that in the way it's being used is so simple and instinctive that someone that has very little training can just pick it up, pull the trigger, it's going to be firing. Not much to go wrong with that. Having said that, the first thing I find that I agree with a lot of what Chris says in his video. One of the things I don't agree as much is the idea that this is superior to your traditional double action, single action revolver. And the thing is, I give a lot of credit to success. When something is successful, I usually try to look at it at why it is. And if something is so obviously successful, I will assume that it has a lot of merit to it. A traditional double action revolver, this is a Python. You have your Smith & Wessons as well, your Model 10. The traditional double action, single action with a spur hammer has not been replaced in large quantities for police use by the hammerless revolver. This has worked. This has proven to be successful. Yes, there's people that have got their Pythons and they took it to a gunsmith and had the spur removed, the hammer bobbed. May God have mercy on their cursed souls for doing that, but some people have done that. Not a lot. It's kind of rare, and I bet some of those guys are regretting that quite a bit. The thing is, Pythons have been used by police across the United States for many years, very successfully so. there's not a ton of that of data so as to suggest or strongly imply that this was getting caught on clothes all the time. If that had happened, then it would have been changed. Then it would have been modified, and revolvers in general would have ended up looking a lot more like that rather than like this. His other point about you having a revolver, meaning that you're always going to be cocking the hammer when you're not supposed to and putting bullets where you're not supposed to, that's basically about poor training. If you're properly trained, you're not going to be messing that up. If you're properly trained so as to use your double action revolver in the way it's supposed to, then that should not be an issue. All right? Carried in a proper holster, that's no problem. Yes, it has evolved into, this is beautiful as this is, it has evolved into something less, something smaller, not as intrusive as this type of hammer, which is a little bit more for kind of target shooting and clearly more for the single action shot type, and it has changed and evolved into something kind of shorter. One of the things that I also feel he's missing is Chris went through all these different police training as years went by, and the way in which it has changed from target shooting to instinctive double action shooting. And he mentions Jim Cirillo, very famous. Last time I checked, Jim Cirillo is packing a Glock pistol. So times have changed and evolved, and he goes through all of that, but he does not mention the final evolution of the combat revolver, which is the one that is used by the GIGN French Special Forces, which is the Manouran MR73. This is the last combat revolver made. The last true combat revolver specifically designed to a T, exactly to the specifications of the GIGN, one of the best, most elite tactical units in the planet. Now these guys, and I'm not going to be going into all of the philosophy behind it, but they want a revolver for combat. If they had felt, and you see, again, as I mentioned, it's not as large, but as you see there, well, maybe you see it a little bit better. As you see it here, it is not as intrusive, it's not getting in the way, but it is still there. If you need it, you have that single action trigger pull. Proper training, you're going to be using your revolver, double action, no problem there. If you need it, you can use it single action as well. That's what the GIGN went for. That's the last evolution of the revolver as we know it, for an elite unit that has been involved in some rather famous incidents, specifically the Air France Flight 8969 hijack, where the GIGN was involved, went in against four terrorists. They saved all the hostages that were still alive, killed the four terrorists, and even the operators, all of them survived, even though some were seriously wounded. Famously in the movie called The Assault, a great movie that you should definitely watch, in this movie they show very vividly how the point man was using a revolver. He was using an MR73 with a 5¼ inch barrel. Actually, it was this exact same gun, right? This same gun is the gun that he's using there in the movie, and the one that he used in real life when he went into that cabin, nailed two terrorists. I think he wounded the third one, but it is, without a doubt, it has been used successfully in that raid and in several other operations. Now, yes, most definitely, 90% of the time, probably here as well, using double action, no problem there. That's probably most likely what went down in this case. And then he was he was shot by one of the other terrorists with an AK. A great movie, you should definitely watch that. But the thing is, the GIGN is still using the MR73, and one of the things they use it in is for rite of passage of the members. For that, you have to get shot by one of the other guys, and they do that. They put a vest on you, they put a plate, and they shoot that with a revolver, with the MR73. They shoot at you single action, single-handed in traditional target shooting stance. So single action is still being used for this. And you see it clearly there. You shoot in single action. This is a video a couple of years old, but this other video, this is from 2018, Eurosatori 2018 demonstration of the JIGN. Look at his stance, same old stance, target shooting stance, revolver, single action, shooting the plate in the guy's chest. Now, Chris from Lucky Gunner mentions you're not going to be shooting at a terrorist at 50 yards away. These guys are thinking precisely about that possibility, about maybe having to use it to shoot a terrorist, fast double action, but maybe also with that careful place shot in single action as well. Properly trained, it shouldn't be a problem for you to do either one. If the situation calls for you, and this applies for a responsible, law-abiding citizen as well, if you happen to need a longer shot accurately placed, then why wouldn't you have double action as well? Why single action as well? Why ask this question of either one or the other? The right answer is always get both. Double action, single action, get both. If you happen to need it and it calls for that situation, you can do that as well. Properly trained, you're not going to be messing that up. In terms of it getting caught in clothing and whatnot and all that stuff, just get a proper holster for it, and it's not going to be an issue. It never has been. Why think about it? Why think it would be an issue if it hasn't been for so many decades and years? People, get a good gun, a good holster, going to be going without any problem, not getting caught. Now, if you're that dedicated to this stuff, if you're that serious about your tactical application of your gun, instead of getting this a beauty like this, bob like that, if you're that high speed, low drag, maybe go with what GIGN also uses, which is a Glock 17 pistol. If you're that serious about being a tactical, go with an auto pistol instead. Yet one of the advantages of this kind of gun is precisely to be able to do this if the situation calls for it. Guys, it's going to be all for now. Remember to subscribe to the channel. Take care. See you on our next video.